Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Riffhard podcast. My guest today is Zach Householder, guitar player for the band Whitechapel and also producer for their new album, Hymns and Dissonance, which comes out March 7th on Metal Blade. It sounds crazy. It is such a great sounding record. And of course, a big part of that also has to do with the mix, but we talked a lot about especially the guitar sound, and a lot of work went into that guitar sound. It's one of my favorite guitar sounds that I've heard in quite a long time. And so this is a fun episode, fun catching up. I present you Zach Householder. Here goes. Well, Zach Householder, welcome to the Riffhard podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's been quite a while, actually.
It's been, quite a while. I feel like...
What we say, 12 years? Was it
2012 or 13?
It was Mark of the Blade, so whenever that album came out was the last time we were doing drums at that house. So that was I'd have to look. I think that was 2012. Yes, thereabouts. It's been a hot
The only reason I feel like I would know that is because I remember I went on vacation in 2013 in June, and the album came out while I was out and like it charted, and I remember hearing about it on vacation in 2013. So then you must have recorded the drums either really early in the year or the year before that.
Well, you know how it goes. Like you record the album a year before it comes out. That's just how, especially nowadays, that's just how it works.
Had to be 2012. But anyways, nice to see you again. Like, I remember hanging out with you guys, and it was a good vibe. And it's good to see you still killing the game.
Trying to, man.
It's awesome.
It's we're at this point, we are a little older, a little wiser, and we're laid back, but it's hard to keep up with there's some really, really powerful competition when it comes to metal now out there, especially like younger bands.
Oh yes,
that just have some energy, man. That's just like, wow. We take some of our lessons we've learned from songcraft, but still try to apply it to, like this most recent album, writing, something a little more heavy than the past two albums, but we've matured with it too. So, again, it's just hard to keep up. It's a challenge, but luckily people still care, and that's all we can ask for.
Isn't it great though that the young generation is so sick?
Yes, dude. There's some bands, man, that we've toured with that are younger, and I'm just like, God, you guys are fucking awesome. And they're just like, they can't believe that someone from Whitechapel saying that. I'm not tooting my own horn, but they're just, they're just as awestruck with it as I am. And the good part is a lot of the times, man, they're all cool. Like we've toured with some bands, they tour easily. They hold up, they put their back into their work, and they don't make the tour miserable for anyone. And they're just good bands. Like that band Spite. Oh man, not only are they great people, but God, that band is heavy. Jesus. They're so good, man.
It's kind of disgusting in the best possible way.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's interesting because, just did, just literally an hour ago, like I told you about it, I just did that episode with Silenos, who I guess is a generation up from us.
Correct.
But we were talking about a similar thing where he's also inspired by this young generation coming up. And I think about that, like a lot of people I know are inspired by the kids these days. But if I think back to like 10 years ago or more, there used to be a lot of bad attitudes and hate towards new generations coming into metal, which was really negative attitude. I thought it bothered me, especially when I started URM and stuff. There's a lot of negativity towards, oh, you're trying to help people come up, fuck you, don't do that. Or these kids suck. It was better when we were doing it, like all those kinds of attitudes. And I don't see that at all now. Like, I feel like that shit is pretty much dead.
it's a lot better now, especially because, if that attitude tries to if someone tries to put that attitude out there on the internet, like you have everyone else, I think the majority now is people that don't really give a shit. They just like music. And the people that are just old crabby bastards just get called out. And, like it's ironic you say that because we had a clip of, that we posted from the new song, and this one comment.
Just sick, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate that, man. This one comment was like, it's like, man, all these deathcore breakdowns just sound the same. They're all just derivative shot versions of the one breakdown by Metallica. I'm like, first of all, I don't think that's what Metallica was going for, but I didn't think they had a copyright on the breakdown to begin with, if that was the case. But it's like, what a really crappy generalization. Just like you're forcing, you're pigeonholing everything into something that's not realistic. And some people just also have to look for a problem where there isn't one. And it's the same thing with like, there's comments, people saying it sounds like Lauren Shore. I'm just like, well, I mean, we're in the same genre. I don't know what to tell you. It's like, we don't, it's like, it's one thing to rip off music, but it's also another thing just to be in the same genre and sound, like you're in that genre. So it's like, you can't please everyone, of course, but the overall reaction and the overall just attitude when it comes to younger generations of music now is way better. And I'm kind of glad we're not, one of those salty old bands that, like that we came up with like back in the day. We just had some bands rub me the wrong way, man. Just like, they couldn't give, two shits about our band or anything about it. And I get there's a line where it's like, yeah, you don't have to like my band, but you also don't have to be a dick about it. Like, just, you toured with bands you don't like, as far as they're not your cup of tea, but that doesn't mean that you have to, it doesn't mean you can't support your genre and,
Totally.
make it, just not be a crabby old man about it.
Yeah, you don't have to like every band, but you can't like every band. And
No.
that's totally fine. There's enough to go around. Like with like booking bands on Nail the Mix, like what we've done one every single month for 10 years. It's a lot of bands. I promise you, I don't like every band we've had on. Like, I just don't. I like some of them. That's always awesome. Like when we get someone on that like I'm a fan of, that's great. But lots of times, like we just have something that sounds cool, that was mixed well, and it's not to my taste. But that doesn't. But like, so what? Like you can still learn from it, and the band still are doing something right if people are listening to them and their stuff sounds great. Like just because I'm not a fan doesn't mean that like there's no value in their music, or that it's not valid, or that there's something wrong with them as people.
Correct. Yeah, that's well said. And it's cool that like Silence, being from a generation before us in a sense, it seems like the way you were saying it, like he kind of like respects, and he kind of likes, he kind of understands the younger generation, and like in the sense that like it's powerful and that he doesn't have to be crabby about it. And, that old elitist attitude, that's the main thing, is that elitist attitude. And man, speaking of, just legendary, just Demu, what a legendary band, huh?
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Holy shit, man. They're so great. So awesome. I've been trying to get one of them on for a long time. It's really, really awesome that it happened. Like they're one of the all times, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. No, I agree.
All right. Before we get back to this episode, I want to take a minute to talk about Riffhard, riffhard.com, not the Riffhard podcast, because this podcast is actually tied to our online school, Riffhard. And if you're new here, it's the world's best online school for modern metal guitarists. We've got hundreds of lessons from guitar players such as Javier Reyes, Jason Richardson, Wes Hawk, Dan Sugarman, Miles Dimitri Baker. Man, I could just keep on going on. Aaron Marshall from Intervals, Mike Stringer of Spirit Box. I'm reading now because I don't want to leave anybody off. Dean Lamb of Arcspire. It just goes on and on. It's like all the best of the best. And you get tons more than just lessons with them. You get instant access when you join, but there's also all kinds of challenges. Like once a month, we do something like 10-day down picking challenge or a 10-day tremolo picking challenge or a 10-day alternate picking challenge where we really guide you through the lessons and make sure that everybody is getting better. We're not just giving you these videos and sending you out into the wilderness to fend for yourself. We are right there with you. We also do 6 songwriting challenges. Like we have a monthly one called King of the Riff, where we give you a brief, like write a Spartan war anthem or write a technical death metal song with like some criteria. And there's prizes that include guitars and cables and all kinds of cool gear. And we also have private Facebook and Discord communities of like mind and supportive people, no assholes. That's really, really important to include. Now, with Riffhard, you also get a subscription to Nail the Mix. They live under the same site. So in Nail the Mix, you get to learn how to mix metal. You also get access to Buster Otoholm's Beginner's Guide to Recording Metal. So if you're just playing guitar and trying to record yourself, you have a band and you want to make demos for your band members, or you want to make your own demos, but you just can't get them to sound anything but garbage, or you just can't get past the starting gate. It's too complicated. We've got you covered. Buster Otoholm will show you how to do it. And also, if you want to take it further and actually learn how to mix, there's no place better than Nail the Mix over at URM Academy. And that's all included with Riffhard subscription. All right, so if that sounds interesting, you want to check it out, go to riffhard.com. I'll see you there. And let's get back into this episode.
We luckily, on this last European run this past summer, the very last show was a festival, and Dimmu was headlining it. And it was like this 20th anniversary or something like that, I think it was, or I can't remember. But it was, unknowingly, it was Galder's last show. Because, he quit to do Old Man's Child full time, and which I'm a huge fan of him and Old Man's Child.
Yeah, I mean, as sad as I am about him leaving, that's the best possible reason.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And man, like some of the material he's posted sounds killer, and Dimmu's awesome. They've been more theatrical, of course, but I think Old Man's Child has they're a little more hateful. You know what I'm saying? They're a little more like their music's just, I think as much as I love Dimmu coming up as a kid and everything, like Old Man's Child was definitely a direction I leaned a little more when it came to the two bands, but I still wore Dimmu out, man. And I'll never forget, I was 18. Me and a few of my friends drove to Atlanta from Knoxville to see, and man, what a lineup. It was at the Old Masquerade in Atlanta, and it was let me think here. It was Hypocrisy, Nevermore, Children of Bodom, and Dimmu. Like,
oh yeah, I was there.
Oh shit, there you go. Yeah. Yeah. Dude,
I think Emil and I went to that, actually.
Dude, what a show.
Yeah.
Man. That's how I discovered. I already knew who Hypocrisy was. They were heavy as crap live. But I had never heard of Nevermore, and that's how I discovered Jeff Loomis. And he was actually playing the exact same model 7-string that I own, that H207, like the LTD version of it. And like when Nevermore started playing, I just immediately like zoned in on Jeff. I was like, what the crap? Who is this guy? And no, man, what a show. Holy crap.
And something like, I also saw Nevermore for the first time, not expecting them, and had the same reaction to Jeff. Like, what is going on?
Yeah, right.
Right here. Like,
he's just,
what the fuck?
He's just a riff master, man. It's like him and there's certain guitar players, man, that just have riffs. Not only they can play leads, but it's their rhythm. It's their rhythmy riffs that are just awesome. Like him and like Pat O'Brien. You know,
Hmm.
I know he had a rough stint of it, man. But God, not only is that
It
like,
happens. Happens to the best of
yeah,
us.
yeah.
Mm.
He, the time that I spent with that guy here and there, man, like, he's been nothing but nice to me ever. And he is one of my all time like riffers, man. Like the guy is he's just, he just bleeds metal, and, such a bummer he's not with Cannibal, but Eric's the shit. I like Eric too. And so, I'm glad they found a replacement that could fit with him and everything like that, to replace Pat, but there's always going to be a little empty hole there. But just certain guys, man, are just riffers, and Pat and Jeff Loomis are just some of them, man.
Yeah, it it's like it's a thing unto itself because like I've tried to figure out what it is. Like, what is it about like riff with a capital R? Like that's kind of like how I think of it. There's like dudes that and bands that give you like a capital R riff, and then bands that just like play riffs because metal songs have riffs going the whole time. So like, and there's a difference between like a capital riff or just regular, and and it's hard to explain, but it's something like I feel like the best riffs and the best riffers, it's almost like another vocal to a degree. Like
Yeah.
it's something that comes across as like just as it's like just as recognizable and impactful as a super powerful vocal. Or, if it's not with the capital R, it's more just like background vibe. But like those capital R riffs are like they're like a lead vocal, basically. Like
Right.
they're like rhythm and melody at the same time. And it's something in the song that is totally, totally catchy and identifiable without being words. It's a really unique thing. You don't really hear it with many other instruments.
Well, that, and you don't really hear it with a lot of bands, period. I mean,
No.
you have like Wes Hauck, he's one of those guys that just
Yep.
writes a capital R riffs. You know what I'm saying? Like he, not only is his playing like is sickening, his his tightness on guitar is ridiculous, but like he writes these riffs that just make you go, wow, like as in like he really, really tries to hone that feeling that like what he's feeling for that riff to get it out. Like some people can get it out better than most. Like, I have to like I'll have an idea for a riff and I don't get it out as well because I'm just not as talented as some people. And Wes just like to me, I've always talked when I've talked to him about Alluvial, his band, to me, it sounds like nightmare music, the way he writes the riffs. Like it sounds like something bad's going to happen the whole time. Like you have that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like to give that feeling with a riff is is that means you nailed it. That means like you did your job. And then you listen to some bands too that have riffers where the vocals are like, very, very lackluster. Not Alluvial, obviously. I think he's a killer vocalist, but like some bands you're like, I'd almost rather than be instrumental. It's like that the
Yes.
vocals are just background noise at a point and they're very,
It's like a rhythm
subpar.
instrument.
Yeah, exactly. But
Yeah, dude, Wes is a craftsman and an artist.
yes,
It's
100%.
he was saying actually on the podcast once that he feels like his job is to give you a dopamine hit with his riffs. Like he's trying to give you that feeling that of like, that's just so good. Like that's
Yeah,
just so
yeah,
right,
yeah.
basically.
It just said in the wise West voice too, just like, oh, that's just so good.
Yeah. Yeah. He says some cool shit like
Oh, dude, he's a wise man.
yeah, it's I don't man, that level of playing is hard to fathom sometimes.
Yeah, and you can't replicate it. Like he's one of a kind, and it's just like Jeff Loomis and Pat, they're all one of a kind. And And I think you gotta, part of it too is realizing when to let the riffs breathe too, because if you bombard them, it's like doing a drug, you're gonna build up a tolerance to it. Uh, so you gotta have, you gotta let it breathe in the sense that give them a little bit, then take it away. Give them a little bit and take it away, and that's part of the art too. Give them some of the capital R riff, and then lean back and give some of the lowercase r riffs. It's just
There's
it's a
nothing wrong
balance.
with the lowercase r. It's
No,
just context in the big picture that matters, I think.
correct.
So the best bands do that. I feel like Arcspire on the tech end of it are like kings of that, and they do that too. Like they go back and forth between like these riffs that are just like, it doesn't matter how fast they are, they're awesome. Like somehow they're at 300 BPM, but like totally musical. But then they'll back off, and not everything is like that. And I feel like, especially with the more technical or brutal sides of the genre, if you don't give space, like if you don't find a way to make it breathe, people are going to stop being able to like decipher what's going on.
Correct. And that's what I feel like comes along with you know, getting older and a little wiser with songcraft. Like, when you're younger, you could have sick riffs all day long, but it's like a good example to me, and this is not dogging the band, it's just their style, but that band 200 Stab Wounds,
Mm-hmm.
uh
They're intense.
intense, killer writing, man. And killer playing that forget the guy's name, but he's a great player, great vocalist, has great riffs. The songs are a little all over the place sometimes. And I'm like, if you could just restructure sometimes, not make it rigid, but like let some things breathe sometimes, let some things go a little longer, repeat some stuff maybe, or, uh, but it's kind of cool though, in a sense that, sometimes you get a taste of something like, oh, that was sick, and then it's gone. So that's kind of their appeal and their style in a sense. But I can't, part of me, the inside of me, the producer side of me sometimes wants to be like, here, let's just break this down, and like, let's get it a little more, let's just make it flow 20 to 30% more. That's like,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like once he gets older, maybe because he's young, he's a pretty young dude. Like maybe someone like him, once they get older and they kind of start really thinking about songcraft in a sense, as opposed to just writing riff, 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 which is what we're all guilty of that. We all used to do it. Maybe it'll change a little bit, but so it really, again, it could be that that's just their style, and maybe that's what appeals about them, or maybe, maybe as time goes on, it will change a little bit, and someone like him, as he gets older, will get a little wiser to it. But still, again, sick band, like you said, they're intense.
What I've noticed sometimes when writing is that it's the tendency to do too much is in order to keep myself interested at the moment. But I feel like you have to take that, what you do when you're inspired and like coming out with ideas really fast, is then take a break from it, come back to it, and then actually feel how it feels over time. Like if you, when, like, does the song get boring after 2 minutes, or like does it feel like the ideas really establish themselves or not? And I feel like in the moment when you're writing it, you're probably too close to it to really be able to make those decisions.
That's why, yeah, that's a really good point too, because like that's why a second set of ears is always necessary, if you ask me. Sometimes, like, because like you said, writing it, you're too connected to it, and it's hard for you to view it as someone that's a spectator, and you need that point of view, like 100% need that point of view. Now, don't get me wrong, there are times, even in our band, like me or whatever other member will write the majority of a song, and it's just good. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
as in, we'll hear it and be like, this is solid, and we'll make a few tweaks and be like, the majority of this is really good. It happens, but that's not as often. The other 80 to 90% of the time, it's like, you know, getting tweaked or adding riffs, taking riffs away. Like, you know how it goes, man. And it's just, you just can't, it's just really hard to do it without having the other set of ears to criticize the material because, maybe like what you were saying with the guy from 200 Stab Wounds, like if he's writing everything and that's just kind of, what he writes is just kind of what goes, uh, he's not getting that input. And I feel like that input is what matters to the final product sometimes, but it's art too. So it's like, if it's your art and you have a vision for it, then, who's to argue with that too?
So with like you taking producer role, is that kind of your role in the band, or you guys have been together for a long time though, so I imagine it's like both, everyone has their role that organically, but then also it's probably murky because it's like a family at this point.
Yeah, it's it can get murky, but yeah, for sure. Like I'm, you know, uh, for the past few albums, just for some reason, like we'll do all the pre-pro here, and I just kind of produce, like in the sense that everybody kind of produces a little bit, but like I just kind of sit back and be like, nah, try this. This melody works better. Blah blah blah. Try this. This works better with that rhythm, etc. I don't know. Like I think about that more than a lot of them sometimes. And that's because like they're writing it and I'm hearing it. So yeah, I'm not saying they wouldn't think about it in my shoes, but uh, this time around for this album, I just no holds bar. I just kind of just inadvertently just produced because I was as I was engineering it, I was just like, I'm going to produce this the best I can too, and uh, they kind of went, they played ball in the sense that like they would really like heed my suggestions and let me steer the ship in that sense sometimes. And I think it's because you know at this point no one knows what we want our band to sound and feel like better than us. Now
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that there's not a producer out there that can make it better, because there are better producers out there. I don't doubt that one bit, but it's hard because you take a gamble with getting a big time producer to help you out because it could really help, but also it's like, yeah, that's not really us. That doesn't sound right. But then you get into the ego thing, or you get into the, then why are you paying me for the for the input, all that stuff. It's a slippery slope. So I think it worked out the best this time around. Like just just producing it and knowing like I know what what my band needs to sound like. I know what we were going for this time. We weren't trying to, quote unquote, return to the roots, make it heavy again. It was just like, every album we just do what we're feeling. That's just always been our thing. Like, this is the material. This is what's been coming out of us. This is what's been flowing out of us. This is what the album's going to be. And this album, the past two albums have been pretty serious, pretty intense as far as like emotionally. And this time we're like, let's have fun. Let's just, let's just write some fucking pissed off music. That was just the vibe this time. And because we're not trying to, again, we kind of always wanted to do our own thing, and we wanted to do something heavy this time just because that's what we were feeling. And I was like, well, that's one thing I can definitely produce. So
This time, like the other stuff's not heavy.
well, it's not that it's not heavy. It was just a little, you know what I'm saying. It was like,
No, I'm just fucking with you.
but
No,
yeah,
this stuff sounds like it's fucking exploding.
it's very not nice.
It's insensitive.
Yes, it's very
Lots of insensitive riffs
Yes.
on there.
very much so.
It made me smile when I heard it, because
Good.
it's just it's pretty extreme. And I like also in the mix that there's moments where it's not like lo-fi, but like it sounds huge, but like also you've got moments where it both sounds huge but very organic sounding, like almost like it's exploding. I don't know how to explain it, like, because it's a modern sounding huge production.
Right.
But
it's pushed.
but it goes dirty.
Yes.
It goes dirty at times.
Very
Like,
much so.
Dude, there's some of those blast beat parts where the riffs are really loud and the drums are distorted and it sounds great. Like, it just sounds so fucking aggressive. And it's like I feel like there could be if the right person isn't mixing that, like, if they don't get it, like, I could see that being an argument with some mixers who need to do everything like 100% proper by the book. But I feel like a lot of my favorite metal mixes by some of the best metal mixers tend to be the ones where they break their own rules. Like, it's still got the quality of that great mixer, but like, they're like taking chances, like clipping things and not setting the levels exactly like the proper way that you would always expect. And it sounds crazy and awesome.
I think that's something I've kind of had to come to terms to with, especially this last album, man. Like, hanging out with, like, because look, Jason and Mark are incredible engineers, and I've been around them a lot, and they mix their certain way, and it's just the way that I've been around to hear mixes for a long time and be like, hands on with them while they engineer. And while their knowledge is invaluable, I do have my way I like to do things, and I'm kind of like you're saying, like, I like to be a little less safe. You know what I'm saying? I like to be
Blow
a
shit
little,
up.
yeah, yeah. And um, I think it's especially nowadays too, with the way mixes are. Like, God, man. I mean, it's they're all just pushed to the fucking limit, and that's just the thing right now. And I'm not saying it's like it's a balance at this point. It's like, okay, well, how do you make it? You know, how do you make it a little modern, but also not totally fall apart? That's the
Yeah.
balance.
It's, you got a lot of riding the line, I think.
Yes, yes.
And it's interesting to me, like, what role taste plays in it, because once you start to get into that riding the line territory, you have to let your taste guide you, because you can't fall back on what would normally be done or what's worked on other records.
I'm just tired of trying that, man. Like, I'm my own worst enemy when it comes to that. Like, it's like, well, I've done this before, might as well keep it the same way. But like,
It's
how are
easy
you
to
gonna
do
find?
that.
Yeah, how are you gonna find new shit if you don't keep trying new shit? And yeah, it's not always gonna work. It's just part of it, man. Like, God, I spent hours on mic setup on Cavs, man, and just sometimes it just doesn't work. And then the next day you try one thing and it works. That's just how it goes.
Is the rhythm tone in the mix like the one you provided to Jeff and Dr.
Yes.
Blood of Wizards?
Dr. Blood of Wizards. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's I didn't want him to reamp or anything like that. I spent a lot of time on that tone.
It sounds insane.
Yeah, it got pretty beefy. That was like, I wanted it to be special because it was like, okay, we're gonna do um, we're gonna self-produce. I was like, and Mark's done great guitar tones. There's no denying that for the past few albums.
He's hard to
So
beat with guitar tones.
it's off. It was so I had a
Yeah.
lot to live up to, but I was like, also too, I want it to be us. I want it to be my goal for this one was like I want it to be Cannibal but Chapel, like as
Mhm.
far as the guitar tone goes, and so I like it's like Cannibal runs that their thing for a long time was like the HM2 or the MT2 metal zone pedal in front of the red channel on the Mesas, and you get that sound, but it's a little messy. It's a little less defined. It's a little less cleaned up, and we wanted something that was a little more defined and cleaned up. So it
Mhm.
it took me some doing as far as the front end and the gain staging on the rhythm, and then also finding the correct, you know, mic setup downstairs and the right cab speaker, etc. Like it's always a process, you know that. But I mean, it was I was a little I got a little worried, you know, I started critiquing myself too much, but then I was like, who cares? It's like, I know what I want. I know what's heavy. I know what we want. And if it's making the music sound heavy, then let's just roll with it. And, I wanted something fun to play. Like I wanted to sit back and be like, this is fun to play. This is like making the riffs sound heavy. We're good. Let's just go. So, it paid
That
off.
makes sense. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like a tone that would be fun to actually play through.
Correct. And that's what like, you know, that was the goal. And, I definitely, I definitely went through a lot of speakers and cabs too, just to find, to find the right setup.
What is it? What did you end up with?
So for the speaker configuration, the mics, like I wound up with a Marshall, 1960 lead cab, that has the G12s in it. And so that's 16 ohm cab. And I thought 8 ohm speakers would be the move on this one, just because, they're a little tighter, they're a little darker. It seemed like it had more of the vibe. But the 16 ohm speakers just, even they're a little looser and a little fizzier up top, it just worked. And I was just like, well, why fight it? And then for the mics, I usually don't blend a ton of mics, but I was like, sky's the limit, so let's try this. And I got 2 Unidynes, and I put one like dead center, and I started angling the other one, like the Fredman technique, but also not exactly his angle. He does, I think, 50 degrees. It's like 45 or 50. I can't remember his angle for the off axis one, but I started getting it, and I had to do it by hand, so it took a little bit. But I just started angling it out until I got it to where I wanted it for a sound. It's canceling what I wanted. And because there's just, no matter what, a 57 always has this tinniness to it that I just never liked. And I always try to like kind of work around that. And blending the two, when it's off axis, just got rid of a lot of that. So I found the angle I wanted on that. And then I was like, but I want that pressure. I want that feeling of like it's about to explode. So then I reached for a Audix D6 mic. And
nice.
and we're not talking like, like 80 and below. We're talking like, 100 hertz, around there, like 100 to 200. I wanted that pressure from that. Now I can make it messy real quick. So you kind of have to monitor it, but like I wanted that frequency. I wanted it to feel like, I wanted that pulsing from that low end, and I wanted that feeling to be there. So it's in there. It's not a ton, but it's there just enough to make the guitar like have a, sound like it's about to, like it's literally, like I said, about to explode. So that was the idea. And so yeah, there's 3 mics on just the one speaker, and then all the lead tone was a Creamback 65, which I love that speaker. With a single 57 on it, but it's one of those, I'll think of it later, but like it's the yellow mod one, which kind of tapers off a little high end, and it sounds killer for leads, and it just worked. It was just gorgeous for all the lead tones, and that's what we use for the leads. And we use different heads for the leads too. We use like a Wes let me borrow an 800 that he has, and then I have a VHT Deliverance, like the 120 watt one. I use that for some leads too on this album.
The leads sound phenomenal too. Like I feel like there's an octaver lead, or maybe I'm just hearing things, but like sometimes there's like these arpeggiated lines that like live on top of the riffs. There are like an overdriven like arpeggiated line, but it sounds like there's an octave or something on them. Am I imagining that?
There are at times, yes. Sometimes there are
Sounds
because
awesome.
I was always a huge like Children of Bodom fan, so like they were like the kings of that lead tone with the octave sound. Even though I think it was reproduced a lot by like the keyboard playing the exact same thing that the guitar was playing on the leads, but like it was just a sound that I've always liked on leads, and I think it just always I don't know, it's always been cool. So we reach for the Pog most of the time on that one. That's just it's a fail safe for the octave effect.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
The yeah, I like how rich it all sounds, and in the arrangement, what I thought was expertly done was you'll have these those like quote unquote clean parts. They're not really clean, but like let's just call them clean parts because they're
Right.
not like leads either. But sometimes putting clean ish stuff over heavy is real hard to get it to work together. Like it works in my head, and then in real life it like just doesn't
It
it doesn't
doesn't
always meld together. But like the way you have it arranged, it's like the right amount of nasty on those cleanish parts, and also the way it's arranged though and written, it all just works really really well. It's a big vibe, which is impressive because lots of times riffs like that don't leave room for anything over it unless you want to like lose the riff.
right. Um Again, there we come back to the balance and the songcraft and just you gotta I think it's trusting your gut too, man. You gotta listen to it. Like if something isn't working, first impressions are everything. That's 110%. First impressions are everything. If from the go it's not working the way you had in your head and it's just not vibing the way it should, you need to rethink it. It's not just gonna work later on. That
That's
goes
a really good point, actually.
yeah. It's
Everyone should like save that.
yeah. Yeah, there's my tidbit of wisdom. If you get anything out of this whole podcast, like that applies for trying stuff in a mix, that applies for sources, 110% for sources. Like if it's not working, go back and fix it before you start tracking. Because yeah, you can fix stuff on down the line, but I
It's
know it's
never going to be awesome.
exactly, and it's the same. You've rated on every recording website there is probably, but like shit in, shit out. Like just you can fix stuff to an extent, but why not just take a little more time, get it done? What's the hurry? Like unless you're in some studio where you're paying 10 grand for 18 hours of use on a legendary desk or something like then
What a
yeah
waste of money.
yeah right, no shit.
Holy
uh
shit, what a waste of money. But the idea that shit's just not going to get better later, like you can salvage things like out of tune vocals or whatever, but if something just fundamentally isn't up to par, it like you can take it from like a D to a C plus or something, maybe a B minus, but it's never going to be A plus.
Correct. And like
Got to come in at an A or an A minus if you want an A plus.
I think that's totally true. And again, I'm glad I've been around Mark and Jason as long as I have, because that really sunk into me, like as far as getting the best possible source possible right off the bat. So let's just start there, and it's hard not to want to settle. It's so hard not to want to settle sometimes because you just want to keep rolling. You want to, you want to get, get the mix together and start hearing it and having fun with the mix part, because that is the fun part, like, um, but you got to spend time on the little crap because that's that's what makes your mix matter. So it's unfortunate, but that's just like that's part of it, man. Like you just gotta suck it up. It's still work, even though it's a great job. It's still work.
One of the things when recording musicians is getting them to understand that, because sometimes, if I'm sure you've experienced this with bands coming in, that, you know, they want to keep moving. They want to keep moving. They don't understand. If you detect a problem that you need to fix, they might not understand why it's so important. It's not their job to understand that. So, your job though is to fix it and to find a way to get them to buy in to it being important for you to take the time.
That's why, like, you know, I don't work with, you know, like I don't put myself out there a lot as far as like being in, you know, to get work. I usually just kind of like word of mouth. You know, if work comes to me, great, because you know, I don't know if I've, and this is not me like, you know, woe's me is pity party, but like, you know, I want to earn it. I really want to earn it. Like, you know, I'm hungry for it, but like, I'm not going to go and post on my Facebook like, hey, we got open slots for, you know, uh, reamping and mixing and blah, blah. I'm just not, it's just not me. I don't, and then I just, you know, we'll let the work come when it comes. But so I don't always work with, you know, big bands that everybody's heard of, you know, and that's fine because honestly, that's just more practice. Like you've got to do, like you've got to, it doesn't matter what you're doing, just do it. Just record, track, mix. It doesn't matter what it is, just do it because you're going to learn something every time you do it. And there's bands I've done where I've had to, you know, they've just never recorded to a level with an engineer that has been as particular as I am when it comes to how things are done. And not only do they learn a lot, but they get better from it too. I've never had any of them fight me on it. I've always been like, well, look, here's the difference. Let's A/B it. You know, here, let me show you this and this, or this is a particular problem, and let me tell you why it's going to be a problem, et cetera, et cetera. And and like you said, the thing to do is to sell them on it and to be like, and the only way you can do that, don't mislead them, but just show them. Like the A/B test, the A/B blind test tells all and wins all the time.
It really does, because people come in with preconceived notions about.
Yep.
Like if you try to sell people on a technique you're going to use, that's probably not worth it. I think the way to win people over is with results, and if you deliver results enough for people, then they'll start to trust you more. To where when you do say, "Hey, we need to stop. I need to solve something," you already have all this like back catalog of results for them to where they will trust that decision. So I feel like when bands push back, one of two things is happening. One is they just don't agree, which is fine. That's their right.
Yeah.
But two, they don't trust you yet. And that you got to solve, because you can't make that a band not agreeing with you. Like that's life. That's fine. Band not trusting you, that's gotta be solved.
Correct. And disagreeing is, it's like, you know, I treat it like we do in our band. 99.9% of the time is a democracy. If the whole band votes one way or the majority votes one way, that just is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with the band that I have in here tracking. If that band disagrees with me and they all want it a certain way, you know, I gave them my input on it. I told them what I told them. But if that's what they want, that's what they want. And if you go whatever and just do it your own way anyway, then you've violated the trust. And then, like you said, you blew it.
Yeah.
So that's that. I mean, yeah, that is a very, very good piece of advice. Like, just sell them on what you think is the best, and if they go with it, great. If they don't, you can't do anything about it. Your job is to engineer. So
Yeah, totally. Well, we hear this from like Nail the Mix students a lot. Like it's the one thing that comes up through the years. It's come up the most. It's like, band doesn't listen to me. Or when they come to the studio, and all this frustration. It's like, dude, they don't trust you. That's what it is. They don't trust you yet. Like, why don't they trust you? It could be because they've never heard of you. It could be because they're only working with you because you're geographically close and they couldn't afford Will Putney or something. Like, there's a million reasons, but at the end of the day, they don't trust you yet. So what are you doing to fix that?
Yeah, and I hate to say it, but there's a good chance that band has been all over the internet forums and made their own conclusions about everything. So, you know, it's
Yep.
hard. Yeah. It's so you're already like you're already up shit creek. So and you got a turd for a paddle. So it's just like good luck. So
Turd for a paddle. I like that.
yeah, so you're already starting in a hard spot. So like I think you need to you being anybody that's in that scenario, um roll with the punches until you get to a point where it's, you know, that you can be relied upon and trusted. It's hard for me. It's always been hard for me in the sense that, look, I get it. I'm from the South. I sound like I sound like I didn't, you know, graduate the 8th grade. I get it. That has always been not been in my favor because of my accent. So, you know, so it's, you know, imagine some people listen to this redneck tell them like, you know, just like, oh, that, you know, that 1 to 2K right there is kind of piercing and not great. Like, let's pull it back some, you know, and they don't know who I am. They don't know me. Like, so yeah, you gotta kind of have a perception of yourself in the sense that, and be aware of how people see you and view you. And you have to placate that in the sense that not everyone is going to see your point of view because of how they view you if they don't know you. And that's just life. So, uh,
Yes.
uh, your job is to learn how to deal with that. And in time, if you really want it and you're really hungry and you're not just doing it as a fad, if you really want to do this, people will start to trust you. The better you get. That's just, and again, that's just a fact. And, you know, some people are just born with a talent, you know, to mix and everything like that. Like Zach Cervini, that guy,
Yeah. Holy shit.
he just also the nicest guy ever on the planet. What a dude. He, you know, he just has a talent for it. He has a skill for it. And, you know, but there's, you know, that doesn't happen a lot. It just doesn't. And most people to get to where he is takes a lot longer. They end up being a lot older. And they had to work. Well, I'm not saying Zach didn't work for it. Don't take it that way. But they had to work a lot longer for it, you know, just because people learn and adapt at different rates, man. Zach's just an alien.
He's just gifted.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically. I mean, he worked his ass off, but like,
Oh yeah,
he's just special, man. That's
he's got it, whatever it is.
Yeah. Some people have that it, and there's no way to really explain it. It just, I've met some people who think that talent's not a real thing. It's like, you just probably have never met a talented person. That's got to be it. Because once you've worked with one and been around them, it's like you'll never believe that there's no such thing as talent again.
You could just be like, here, let me show you this. Let me pull up this little guy here that everyone may have heard of or not. His name is Amadeus Mozart. Check it out. Like, you know, yeah, he wasn't talented. He just studied a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what they say. That's what they say. You know, I think it's because they want to believe that if they just work hard enough, they'll be that good.
It's look, that's a good innocent, not that point of view, but like the work ethic. I don't care how talented you are. If you have that work ethic too, you're going to be even better. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're that talented and you have that work ethic, you're going to be on top. Yeah. But even if you're not as talented, that work ethic is still going to help you in the long run, but it's not, but you can't deny that talent doesn't come into play because like, look, man, I have been that, you know, the past 10 years of my life, like I've delved into electronics, like I build, I'll build my own preamps. I'll build my own, like, like FET compressors and stuff like that, because it's something I wanted to do. And no, granted, these are kits and stuff like that. And I'm not building it from scratch, because no matter what, there's just something about understanding electronics that you either sometimes have or you sometimes don't. I get about 50% of it. Getting that
Mhm.
other 50% of it is just a whole something that, like, I feel like your mind has to be wired for it. No pun intended. And I'm not saying I couldn't get there. Like, I would need proper schooling and a proper level of math that I do not want to go back and take again. uh, so yeah, talent in that scenario definitely matters, because if you're talented when it comes to understanding electronics like that, there's something to be said, because you have people like you have these people that, you know, um, have you ever looked inside of one of those, like is it SPL that makes the transient,
Yeah.
thing, like, okay, the hardware version of it? I couldn't begin to tell you on the inside of that thing what is going on.
Hmm.
Do yourself a favor one time if you ever get a chance to look on the inside of one of those. But somebody figured it out. And, I guarantee you that guy was talented, whoever he was. He didn't just work hard, he did both. He had talent and he worked his ass off.
Yeah, I mean that's the ultimate combination. But let's be real. Most people with sick careers in music aren't necessarily that like goat level talent. Most of them are just
Yeah.
normal people
Yeah.
with good work ethic,
That's a good point, yeah, because a lot of the people I know that are,
above average talent, but not like genius.
well, how many people you know that are really, really talented have terrible work ethic? I'm saying, like,
Yeah, a few,
there's a few. There's a
a
few.
few.
So, like, I feel like that's it seems like the more artistic somebody is sometimes in that sense, whether it be, you know, whether it be painting, drawing, playing an instrument, the more artistic they are, the more, like, aloof they are, the more like,
But you know what? Less so than as I go, like as I get older and have met more people, the category of people who are actually really talented and actually like just lazy as fuck. That's not as many people as I used to think it was. Most of the people I know that are like talented, they only discovered their talent because they had work ethic.
well, they put in the
Like,
work first.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's how the talent was discovered, was because they had the drive to even start in the first place. So I'm actually have noticed it's kind of like, there's this myth out there of like undiscovered great local bands. That's bullshit. That's fucking bullshit. Like, yeah, you might be able to find one or two or three, but like people talk about like that's a very widespread thing, and that's fucking bullshit, because really, really great local bands get discovered because that's the whole music industry is really, really good at this. That's
Yeah,
designed
I've done it for
to
a while.
discover. Yeah. It's designed to find those people. Like, word gets out. Like, if someone is truly awesome, people talk about it and it gets out. Like, they don't stay undiscovered. It's just this myth. Like people think that there's like really great bands, like some like Dream Theater level prog band or like some Opeth level prog metal band out there that just hasn't been discovered. And it's not true.
And it's like, no, I think it would maybe, if you had a local band that put in the work together for years and really got good at playing and recording with each other, then yeah, I'd say maybe they could get to that point eventually. But if you just got a bunch of dudes that got together and, wrote an album together, like, I feel like I highly doubt their first album, is going to be the end all be all undiscovered local band. Now I'm not saying never say never, but like you said, it's no, there's a reason they're not discovered yet.
Well, it's part of what you were saying earlier is why I think that it's the case. You learn a lot when you work with pros. So like if you work with like real producers, you tour with bands, have like killer players. You get to see what the competition is doing. Like every night on tour, this fucking killer band. You get to see, like I remember when Doth did a tour with Behemoth and back in like '07, and seeing them every single fucking night is like, that's a masterclass on how to be a better band. And at the local level, you just don't get that. And you don't get to like do a whole album with some top level producer where like you're really getting pushed to be your best, with your songs, with your playing. That just doesn't happen at the local level. It can't, because there's not enough pressure to make it genuine. Like you can't engineer, you can't fake the pressure of having like a world level expectation. So that's why it just doesn't happen at the local level, because the conditions aren't right for it. It happens later once the conditions are right for it.
Well, I've gotten, those, like, sometimes I would do those Ask Me Anything things on Instagram, in your story. And sometimes, more than once, a few times actually, I get a question like, any advice for upcoming touring bands? I'm like, pay attention to the bigger acts. Pay attention. Don't rip them off, but pay attention to how they're doing things professionally. Pay attention to how they're doing their show. Pay attention to the craftsmanship and the artistic aspect of it. Prime example, we did that tour with Meshuggah. I mean, every night I was watching that band. Every night. And not because, of course I love the band. That's besides the fact. They're probably one of the greatest bands of all time. But
Yes.
it was more just watching. It was like I said earlier about the craft getting better as you get older. Well, they've got quite a few years on us, and they've got quite a bit more. Their craft is owned. It's honed to a level that we're just not at yet. I know we've been at it for a while, but the only thing that gives you that is time, man. And like watching them live, dude. Like I'm like, as like you take mental notes, and you're like, yeah, okay, yeah, they got their shit together, and there's a reason they are who they are, and they are as big as they are now, and you cannot deny that. And it's like you said, if you don't surround yourself with greatness, you can't be better. You just can't. The expectation's not there. And luckily we got, early on, man, we got like in '09, we got to do the the Mayhem, the '09 Mayhem, which is the one where it's like Slayer and Manson headlined it. And that was our first stint with really, really big bands like that.
That's an education right there.
It sure is. And then we got to do it 2 more times, luckily. And the year with Slayer and Slipknot headlining, man, that was a killer year. And that was the Slayer, that was when Hanneman had passed, but they had Lombardo and Gary Holt. And Slayer was on top, man. They were on top of their game. They sounded insane that tour. And whether you like Slipknot or not, man, that's what I'm getting to next. Is like,
love them.
I love them. I've live. It was they maybe don't go as crazy as they used to, because let's be honest, you get older, you can't move like that as much. But it is another masterclass in like just putting on a show, man. Like, and coming back to the Meshuggah thing, it's just not only is there LD, he's a wizard, but you know what? That guy is a wizard because he put in the work. He put in the work. He stuck with that band for forever. He toured with them. He saw what other bands were doing. He saw what bigger acts were doing. And guess what? He's one of the best LDs in the business now.
Mm-hmm.
So it comes full circle, man. That's how it works. Same thing with local bands, your engineering, your skill on your instrument, it's all the same. Like you gotta want to be better to begin with. You gotta have the work ethic. Talent doesn't hurt, but talent is also discovered because you put in the work, like you said, and you got to pay attention to what some of these bigger artists are doing, man. It's just a fact because they've been doing it longer and they have more knowledge about it than you do.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you have to try to be like them or anything like that.
Correct.
Everything from what do they do when they get to a club? Like say they don't have a crew that does every single thing for them. Like what happens to the gear? Like what are their policies on like all the little everyday things that go into them being successful as an entity
And just running a smooth camp.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it. Like that's our whole thing. Like every band that tours with us when we headline, at the end of the tour, they say that was the easiest tour I've ever done. And I'm like, yeah, that's the point. As in, we don't want to make it difficult. We don't want to make it, it's supposed to be smooth. But we've also done it. We've also been on the shit end of the stick. We've also been showed how we never want to treat bands. And so we take care of like if bands are pulling their weight, man, we will take care of them. We will accommodate them. We're not going to pull some of that rock star shit. Like we just don't. We never have. And by the end of the tour, they go, that was the easiest tour ever. I'm like, well, you guys pulled your weight and, it's 50-50 in that sense. And so if a band is coming to a venue and running a smooth camp, like, they have a schedule they follow. No, if they don't have a bunch of techs that do everything for them, the members aren't fucking off. They're getting their shit on stage. They're getting it set up. Which that was me and Kegel for a long time. Kegel's our front of house engineer. He was originally like right when Somatic came out, the very first album, he was the original guitar player, one of the original members, and he got in a motorcycle accident and he severed some nerves in his arm. And so at that time they were about to go on their first quote unquote tour and they called me up and here we are now. So I guess if anybody ever asks, I just say I've been there since the beginning. But Kegel, Brandon Kegel is his name. He's now a front of house guy. He might as well be the 7th member. So I'm glad he's still with us in that sense. So, but he's, him and I, back in the day, we do a lot of that work on stage, setting up everything and like. But now with we do have techs and everything like that. To an extent, we don't have a ton of people, but like, we got a guitar tech, depending on the tour, we'll have a drum tech and then we'll have, the LD, we got Brandon as front of house and, our guitar tech kind of doubles as the stage manager too. And like, if they are doing something incorrect or if they were doing something to set a bad precedent or example, then we address that and be like, you can't do that. Cause not only does it matter, like they're all watching you. Like you gotta do this better. You gotta do better. But it's not in a negative way. It's just like gotta be better. But I'm gonna quit rambling now because I've been rambling about this. But
no, I think it's one of those things where by doing it together and kind of seeing all the worst plus the best ways of having it be done, and the fact that you kind of like started with no real crew and worked your way to having a crew. It's like, if it's much easier to know what something's supposed to be if like you put in the time. Otherwise you're not going to know how to run it properly.
Correct. Because if you just start touring and you're like, okay, I have a whole crew, but I don't know how to direct them. Like, I mean, I guess there are some artists that maybe, they're big. So say they get really big, off the internet and they finally do a tour and they have a big budget for it. If you got a whole crew, man, there's been some bands that are huge that we've toured with and they are the most clueless bands I've ever been around. It is wild. That's an understatement. I'm just like, well, hey, you got to learn somehow, more power to them, but it's just like, it exists. It's a real thing. And,
it's fucking wild though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that, every once in a while, we'll have back before COVID, with
Yeah.
Nail the Mix, we used to travel every single month to them. Like, so we would fly to the producers, or we would fly them to us, or, you know, sometimes you'd meet up in a third, like in LA or something. Like sometimes with the Europeans, it was hard to get them to come to Florida or something.
Right.
So we would like make it more enticing by, we'll fly you to LA. We'll do this in LA. It'll be cool. We'll do it at like some cool studio. Anyways, most of the time everything was smooth, but every once in a while you'd have the dude who needed their manager to come with them so that to be sure that they got on the flight. You know? stuff like that, so that they could find the airplane.
You know, it that goes back to one of two things. It's there was a different time of touring and being a metal musician back in the day. You know what I'm saying? Like, as in, shit was way different back, you know, before the digital age kicked off when it comes to
Yes.
music, and like budgets were bigger, all that stuff. Shit was way different. There's that aspect of it. Then there's the aspect that we talked about a while ago where some people that are super talented and super, you know, just very, very, you know, artsy people, they're very clueless sometimes too. And it's like a puppy. Every day's the first day, you know. So so you got to like hold their hand going to do everything. So it's like maybe that's the case too sometimes. So I think it's one of two things. Either you're from that rock star era or you're just the puppy, you know?
Yeah, I mean, there is definitely a parallel universe that band people can live in sometimes.
Yes. And yeah, you literally live in a world like you ask someone to bring you a sandwich, they'll do it. You know, it like
Mm-hmm.
it's not real life. It's just not.
It's, though, if you've been in that world and treated like that for long enough, you might forget what it's like without that.
I'm glad we didn't. I'm just kind of, you know,
It's a blessing.
yeah, I think it is in the end. Like you look back on it, it's like, I'm glad we came out the way we did. Everything happens for a reason. I wouldn't have wanted to come up and like just have people like just to be that person, you know, because it makes you, ugh, you see people act like that sometimes and you're just like, ugh.
Man, I could tell you when we so the whole URM Nail the Mix thing gives me a totally new perspective on artists and producers, because normally, you know, whether it was me and the band, like we're part of the tour, we're getting paid something. As a producer, you're getting paid like you're working for the band. But this is different because we're the ones licensing the music, the band's music. So we're paying them, or the label. We're paying the producers. We're booking them. And so it's a whole different way of understanding the personalities involved. But the older you go, the closer you get to the old music industry, the more ridiculous people get.
Oh,
It's,
yeah.
yeah, like their expectations are often wildly divorced from reality.
I think that's just it's a dying breed in a sense, I think.
Yes, thank God.
And you know, unless URM starts doing like, you know, Taylor Swift, I don't think you're going to worry about that anytime soon. You know, I hope you
No.
do get Taylor, but you know,
I'm happy with metal. I mean,
Okay, yeah.
we'll take Taylor, but I'm happy with metal. But man, I hear some people who say that it was better before. I disagree. I think the modern music industry is way better.
it it depends on why they're saying it's better or it was better.
More private jets usually is
Yeah,
what they were
exactly,
saying.
exactly. Like as in, but it's like now it's just like, I don't know, dude. Some things are a lot easier in a sense, you know. Let's just, you know, I can pack up, you know, I can pack up my studio now and take it somewhere and go work, you know, if I have to. So back in the day,
Yeah.
that wasn't a thing really. And, uh, you know, as far as like you would really have to work on, you know, a whole other system and like, or you remember how long it used to take to like transfer data between hard drives, and now you can transfer like 6
Mm-hmm.
gigs in 5 seconds. You know, I know these are little minute things, but it's like
It adds up.
it adds up. Yeah. And you're in an industry now where all these little things that add up to make it a lot easier and a lot, I mean,
And the genres, man, you
yeah,
can. I don't think that like you could have the career that, for instance, you guys have playing the fucking shit you play in the 90s.
I don't know how that would have gone over in the 90s. It's like when Meshuggah was touring with Tool. What do you think most of the Tool fans thought about Meshuggah? You know,
Yeah.
it's like maybe 30% of them out there were just like, this is sick. And then the other 70 were just like, I don't know what's going on. And where's Tool? You know, it's like,
Yeah, I just think that nowadays you can be a niche band and do really well.
yes,
And
that's correct.
the genres don't matter the way they used to. And like there's no gatekeepers. I think back in the day you could have more private jets, but there were gatekeepers, and it's like a tiny percentage of bands ever got past the gatekeepers ever. That shit is so different now.
It's so
And
done. It's so done now. Like
yeah,
it's done. And you can be a niche band, like you said, but you can find your audience organically now because everyone has access to it. It's not just what the gatekeepers decide to put out and what they don't decide to put out.
yeah, it's way better. I feel like even if the upwards, if the ceiling might be a little lower on, probably aren't going to get another Metallica, but like when people think back to the mega bands, that was a tiny lottery winning percentage.
Yes.
That was like basically impossible to ever expect that to happen. So this music industry now is way more realistic to where if you're actually awesome and work hard and like do it intelligently, you can be something crazy, like play crazy music and still have a career. That's a beautiful thing.
Correct. And Metallica is they're a once in a lifetime thing, dude. Because aside from your classic rock bands that are still doing it now, and they can still, they can still sell out big places. Metallica and a band like, I don't know, maybe Foo Fighters, they can still sell out big arenas and everything like that too. And that's just rare. That even doesn't matter what era of music we're in now, like, whether it be 20 years ago or now, like Metallica was lightning in a bottle, man. Even Megadeth, they didn't get that big. Look at all the old 80s hair metal bands. They're not that lasted for, a hot minute.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have a genre they could just ride out into the sunset like Metallica has.
Mm-hmm.
And Metallica and we can go on all day about them. They're one of my favorite bands too, and mainly for nostalgia's sake and everything. And I know it's like it's typical to say they're one of your favorite bands, but like they really are. They're one of my bigger influences from back in the day, and that you just I don't know if that's ever going to happen again because they've had such a huge like era of just being on top, man.
No, it's not going to happen again.
No, that's what I'm saying.
It's not, but people shouldn't look at that as a bad thing. Like it doesn't, it's not, that era was way more impossible to establish yourself in. This is a much better time period for people who have their shit together.
Yeah, it's still politics, but it's not as bad, I feel like.
It's not as bad because so this is part of what I've learned through the URM thing. So now that we are licensing music, right, and talking to who owns masters, the amount of artists who own their own masters is crazy. It's awesome. And I'm signed to Metal Blade. I believe in record labels. I'm just saying that there's a lot of artists who have gone around the whole system and still have careers where back in those days, it may be like there was one or two that I could think of who were actually independent, but yes, there's politics, but it's not at the level where it defines every single aspect of your trajectory. You can go around certain parts of the system if you want to. And I see it. I see it all the time. It's great.
I mean, you're 100% right, man. Like I look, we wouldn't be where we are without Metal Blade, but at the end of the day, they're a label. Their goal is to make money too. And I do wish, that's the one thing as time goes on. Like if I'd have been wiser and older when we signed and everything like that, I wish we could get our masters. I wish we did own our masters, but it is what it is at this point, and it makes sense. Excuse me. It makes sense to keep, to stay with the place where our discography's at, and that's why we keep, sticking around with them. And like we all, we know all Metal Blade, and
They're great.
they're great. Yeah, absolutely. But again, you can't deny that's just a business. It's a business. Their goal is to make money. It's just part of it. So, but yeah, if I was coming up now and doing it, if I was a solo artist, 100% by myself, I would distribute, you don't need to distribute physical copies. Maybe if you want to do vinyls at some point, but you don't need CDs. As far as getting out there digitally, that's not as hard as it used to be at all. So,
No.
but no, I know we've rambled about the industry and stuff like that. I don't want to sidetrack you anymore.
Oh, it's okay. We're actually just about out of time anyways.
Okay.
But that's okay. We talk about whatever on here.
Okay, right on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's just, yeah, again, it's just, I don't regret, obviously, the Metal Blade thing, but again, I wish we could own our masters, and there might be a stipulation in there. I know I've heard some things about like after so many years, you have the right to get them back or something like that. I don't know how that works. I haven't looked that much into the contract, but
It depends on the deal, but that's pretty common that after X amount of time, the masters revert.
right. And, so if we get them back at some point in our lives, I might be 60 years old, but whatever, at least I got them back. So
The thing is, I've thought about this a lot, is, you get a lot of people, like when Doth got back together, all my friends who do this independently were like pushing the be independent thing. And it's like, yeah, I understand you can make more money, but I don't have time to be fucking independent. Like everyone I know that's independent, that is a full-time job.
Sure
They're
is.
doing everything that the label does. And yes, I could do it, but do I want to do it? And not for Doth's not big enough. I'm not going to fuck over URM and suddenly try to do full-time admin for my band when I could be on a label.
well, you did the DAW thing to get back together for fun anyway. Like that was
Yeah.
like, as in like, that's supposed to be something fun, not stressful.
Yeah, exactly. It's a thing where like labels definitely play their role. Like, so I think a lot of bands where they don't have somebody in the band who could be that person, like the business person, it's probably a really bad idea to be indie.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's there's very few bands that can pull it off well. Like August Burns Red, they're totally indie, and
Yeah.
but they work their asses off. At least the one guitar player that does I forget his name. He's gonna get pissed at me. From what I understand, he does like a lot of the business side of it, and it's a full-time job. As far as him doing all that, so it's not easy. And granted, I'm glad for our band, Alex has always been the business guy, so he still handles a lot of the business side of it. But we're not totally independent, and I don't think Alex will be able to have a kid and a family and cut hair and do it full time like that. He wouldn't. There's no way.
Exactly. So there's a trade-off. Like it's not this binary thing where it's like labels bad, all they do is leech, independent good. It's not that simple. Like it's also about bandwidth and what you want your life to look like.
Yes, correct. And at the end of the day, it's like I'd rather be sitting here doing this as opposed to like, you know, figuring out distribution for Europe for our next album. You know, it's like
Yep.
it's just like that's not something I'm interested in. That's not something I want to do. I know it's necessary, but that's why Metal Blade. I'm glad they're there. So
And the dudes I know who do that are legitimately interested in that kind of
correct,
stuff.
they are. That's what I'm saying. Let someone that
Yeah.
legitimately is interested in it, that wants to do it, because it's like I'm sure they wouldn't be legitimately interested in sitting here and I don't know, dipping out 1.7, notching it out.
Yep.
I don't know if he wants to do that or not. So I don't I don't I don't argue with it, man. I think it's a necessary. I don't even want to say necessary evil. It's just necessary for us at this point in our lives, uh, the way all of our lives are. Because Gabe has a kid now, Alex has a kid, and Phil lives with his fiance. They had their life together, and then myself and Lori, you know, we just got married in November, but like I think us trying to do what we're doing now, we're trying to remodel the house and get all that sorted out. Like we just wouldn't be able to do it, man. It wouldn't be like it just wouldn't be feasible because it would just be too much. It's like I don't have time to breathe.
Yeah, I mean, I think it seems like it's a really good situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like lots of good choices all around for many years led to being here now, and fucking sick new record that sounds like it's exploding, and it's great.
No, thank you, thank you. I think Jeff and Drew, they did their thing with it, and it was a little rough at first. I think they got like because Drew was super stoked on it. It's like I want Chapel to have an album that sounds like they do live. Like just because live, like we punish you live, and he's like, that's what I want on the record. And Drew, I think from the start got a little overzealous with just pushing it too hard. But it's the first draft, so
Yeah.
but by the time it was all said and done, everything got tweaked, man. It worked out, and it's a pleasure working with them. They did a good job, man. And then the whole engineering part of it, like I'm glad the band let me like try that for a change, and it was fun for me because I got to, I went to Blackbird in Nashville and like rented a bunch of cool pre's and stuff like that and some mics. It's like if we're not using the budget to pay engineer, why not use the budget to rent some cool gear?
Yeah.
And so I rented a bunch of vintage Neve stuff for all the shells, and no, it's killer, man. It was fun. I was doing drums here. It was good too because I'm familiar with doing drums here at my place, but it was also nice to, you know, get to kind of have a little fun with some of that more vintage Neve stuff because I don't ever see myself buying, paying like $3 to $6 grand a channel for some vintage Neve stuff. So
Why do that when you can rent it?
yeah, exactly. Or just, if you really want to buy it, just buy like the BAE stuff or the Vintech stuff. It's the same damn thing. It's like,
I agree.
yeah, it's still a Neve. It's still a 1073. It's the closest you're gonna get. The only reason you want the vintage stuff is because, the capacitors are older and are probably leaking and it has a unique sound.
Yeah, which could be good or bad.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've seen it go both ways with that old gear. Like
Correct.
it has to be like leaking in just the right way,
Yes, correct.
which is basically crapshoot.
It means it's gonna fall apart at some point. I definitely had one of the
That
older,
is exactly what it means.
I had one of the older the what is that model name? It's the blue, it's like the blue greenish Neve channels. It's the
I know what you're talking about.
yeah, I had one of those channels go bad while we were tracking. Or luckily, no, we had just started getting drum tones, and so luckily the guy at Blackbird, which killer rental company, they are so cool. He just literally overnighted another unit right away, and it was fixed right away. So it's just luckily, if you get a rental company like that, hopefully they're cool. Like, Blackbird's fantastic for that shit, man. They're just super laid back, and they, they'll help you out. And it's, so I feel like if you did it anywhere else, like if it was in California, they wouldn't give a fuck. They'd be like, well, we'll get you when we can get it. So you're in LA. It's like, they're probably not going to send you anything until they feel like it. But in Nashville, everybody seems to want to help you out. So, and it's like 2.5 hours down the road from me.
And Nashville still is, it's still like untarnished in that way.
Yes, correct.
So,
correct.
Still give it a little time, but
Yeah,
but it hasn't been LA totally yet.
Not yet. Hopefully it won't be, but yeah, man.
Dude, well,
no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say we are out of time.
All right.
So I just wanted to thank you very much for taking the time.
Of course, yeah, and I know we didn't talk about a lot about record stuff, but whatever. It was a good conversation.
Oh, it's
man.
okay.
I enjoyed it. I really did. Thanks for having me. And again, congrats on URM and everything, and Nail the Mix and stuff. And
thank you.
It was a pleasure to be on here, and I'm glad you asked, man. I was stoked.